Hey there, lovely. If you're a driven and highly ambitious woman who has checked all the boxes, followed all the rules, only to realize you don't actually feel fulfilled or you don't feel like you're living your purpose, then you are absolutely in the right place. My name is Melissa Chavis. I'm an intuitive mindset coach, and I am absolutely obsessed with helping you discover your true purpose, that thing you were put here on this earth to do, so that you can live the most fulfilling and abundant life possible. Hey there, beautiful. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Awakening podcast. Today, I want to talk about a topic that can be very challenging for many of us. As you likely know, when you've spent your entire life trying to meet other people's expectations of you or doing all of the right things, checking all of the boxes, and creating a certain level of success in this world, you probably never really learned how to create and uphold boundaries for yourself. So, as a young girl, you were likely praised for being such a good girl and not really causing any kind of an issue, which likely meant that you were very compliant, that you did what you were told, regardless of how you felt about it. And then you probably moved on into adulthood, kind of doing the same thing, just being very compliant, doing all the right things, making sure that you were following directions, and not really paying a whole lot of attention to whether or not you really wanted to be doing that thing or whether or not that was really something that you actually wanted to do, and not really focusing on how you felt in every single situation versus how the other person might feel based on your actions or your decisions in that situation. Essentially, you've probably lived a lot of your life getting rewarded and praised for being very compliant, being very aware of other people's expectations of you and what they want you to be doing in the situation and how you can appease them, which can lead to a lot of burnout and frustration and resentment and all of those feelings that many of us end up feeling. We get to this point where we realize we've done all the things that we're supposed to do, and we just don't feel as fulfilled as we thought we would at this point in our lives. And we don't feel good. It feels terrible inside to get to this point where you realize that you have not been living life for you. But then many of us, myself included, get to a point in our lives where we realize what's been happening. We kind of see what's been going on. And, typically it's not with that level of clarity where we see, like, oh, this is what we've been doing and here's why we feel this way, right? A lot of times it's like, I've done all the things and I've checked all the boxes. I've always done what I'm supposed to do. And now I'm sitting here not feeling happy, not feeling fulfilled, not feeling like I'm living a life that I want to be living. And so then we start to question why. We kind of figure out essentially, like, oh, that's because I haven't really been focused on living my life for me and following the things that I want to be doing and paying attention to what is really meaningful for me and what I really value. And so we get to this point where we make a decision that we want to start doing things that feel good for us. We want to start living our lives in this way that aligns more with who we truly are or who we truly want to be. You've essentially been living life for the other people around you and for their expectations and making sure that they're happy with the things that you're doing. And so you get to this point where you realize, like, it's time to start living life for me. It's time to start figuring out what feels meaningful for me, what I value, and who I truly want to be, how I want to show up every day, and what is important for me in this life versus only thinking of everyone else around you. So we realize that we need to start protecting our time and our energy better, and we need to start being more intentional with the way we are spending our days and the things that we're doing. And so we start to try to create some boundaries in our lives. And I want to talk a little bit first about what boundaries actually are, because I think that this can be a tricky distinction for some of us. Boundaries essentially are a way to effectively communicate how you will behave in a given situation. So when X happens, I will do Y. Because when X happens, I feel a certain way and I'm trying to maintain my personal peace. And I can do that by doing Y in this situation, right? So boundaries are not saying this person needs to do a certain thing in order for me to be around them. Or if they don't do this thing I'm asking, then I'm leaving because they need to do this thing for me in order for me to feel this way in the situation. Boundaries are not asking someone else to behave differently. They're a way of communicating how you will behave in the situation because ultimately other people get to decide what they do and say and feel, right? And we then get to decide how we respond in the situation. So boundaries are very clean and clear, and they are upheld consistently. I think a lot of people also think that, like in my sort of previous scenario here, a lot of people think that boundaries basically only pertain to interactions with other people. And specifically, a lot of times they think boundaries only pertain to interactions with other people in a confrontational way. But actually, something, you know, along the lines of, I really want to start taking better care of myself for my personal health and well-being. So I'm making it a priority to start going to the gym every Tuesday night can also be setting a boundary. You are clearly communicating what you are going to do in a given situation. So it's very clear that on Tuesday nights, you're going to the gym and you've communicated why this is important for you, right? So you communicate this boundary to basically anyone in your sphere who needs to be aware of it. So in the case of I'm going to the gym every Tuesday night, if you have kids, you have to make sure that there's someone taking care of your children every Tuesday night. So you're communicating clearly to whoever that caretaker is, whether that is a spouse or partner or someone else in your life, you're saying, here's what I'm doing. You can say, I need to do this. I need to go to the gym for myself. This is a decision that I'm making, and I intend to maintain this boundary. I intend to keep going to the gym every Tuesday night. And I would appreciate your support in this situation, whatever that means, basically. So boundaries can look very different, but at sort of this high level, it is just a clear communication, clear guidelines about how you yourself are going to behave or move through whatever situation is coming up. Okay, so that's what a boundary is. Like I said, this can get very sticky or tricky sometimes for people who try to use this boundary language as a way to explain certain behaviors or explain the way that they're treating some other people in their lives that maybe aren't such, positive behaviors or positive treatment because of these quote unquote boundaries that they've set with this person. And I just want to be really clear that that is not what a boundary is. A boundary is not creating confrontation or creating drama in a situation with someone because you just don't like their actions or because they're not behaving in a way that you want them to. So boundaries are all about us and about what we're doing, saying, how we are acting in any given situation. Okay. So as someone who has had a hard time setting boundaries up to this point in your life, and you are at the point where you're realizing that you want to move your life in a certain direction and you want to start really paying attention to how you're feeling and what is really important to you. And you've decided that you need to create some boundaries in your life. You need to create some sort of guardrails. How do you do that? How do you get started with this when it's not something that is super familiar for you and something that probably feels kind of challenging in the beginning? The number one most important thing to remember here is that it is not your problem how other people feel about your boundaries. When you're setting them consciously and you're communicating them clearly, you are doing your part in the situation. Any reaction from another person is their responsibility to deal with and not yours. And I think that this is a really important distinction here because if you are someone who has consistently let people in your life dictate the way that you behave or the way that you interact with them, and they're not used to you setting any boundaries or starting to really get more bold in the way that you are showing up for yourself, other people can start to have certain reactions when you start to set these boundaries. And sometimes they're not great reactions. Sometimes the people in your life are going to question, why you're being the way that you're being now. This isn't you. This isn't how you've ever behaved in these situations before. So that can be really challenging as someone who has probably been a people pleaser and who has really cared deeply about what other people think of them in the past. So that's why I'm bringing this up because I think it's a really important distinction to say, yeah, setting boundaries can feel very challenging because other people might have reactions to them, but those reactions aren't your problem. They're not your responsibility in this situation. Having said that, setting boundaries really begins with getting super crystal clear on what is truly important for you. What are your individual priorities and values in life? So that's why inside my one-on-one mentorship program, we start out with this elevate and align kickoff call where we get super, super clear on where the client wants to go and what that looks like for her and why that is such a priority for her to get to a place in her life where this is her reality. So you need to get super clear on what's really important for you, why it's really important for you, and what it looks like to live in that reality. Because once you have that level of clarity, you can start to create boundaries in your life that align with this overall objective. And they will support you in how you want to feel and how you want to move through life on a day-to-day basis. So, in order to start progressing toward this new version of reality for yourself, this vision that you've created. You need to understand how you want to feel and how you want to show up in your life on a day-to-day basis. This is where those boundaries come in because you will create routines and boundaries that will set you up for success in this space. Once you've decided on the boundaries that you want to put in place in your life, or not that you will sit there and decide all of the boundaries all at one time, right? Probably kind of one at a time, move through it, get used to doing that thing, and then we move on to the next one. So once you've decided to implement a boundary in your life, it's really important that you communicate it clearly, as I said earlier, to anyone that may be impacted by it in your life. A lot of times, when you are trying to move your life in a certain direction, you want to make sure that you're communicating clearly with friends and family who are around you, the people that are consistently in your life, and saying like, hey, so here's what I'm doing, and I really need to start doing X, Y, and Z on a consistent basis so that I can get end result, right? Like the example earlier, letting your spouse know, hey, because I really want to work on my physical health and well-being, I need to go to the gym every Tuesday night. And that's really important for me. So I want to make space in my life to be able to do that. So communicating these boundaries, communicating how you're going to behave is incredibly important in making it happen. Because not only are you then getting that little bit of accountability there, but you are just making others who are around you aware of what they can expect from you moving forward. So this also could require some difficult conversations. Like I said earlier, sometimes the reactions that you might get from other people are not the greatest and don't always feel great. So it could require some difficult conversations with other people. And in order to have those conversations, you'll need to value your own time and space, which is why inside my program, we work so much on creating supportive beliefs about ourselves and about what we want and need in life so that we value our own needs and we value our own priorities so much that we're able to have these difficult conversations, so much that we're able to implement these boundaries in our lives because we understand how important it is for us to have those things in place and to have those difficult conversations with the people around us, because it's super important that we start moving through life in this way because it's important to us and we're important. So, having said that, once you have communicated these new boundaries to the people who really need to know about them, you don't have to go around telling everybody about all the new things that you're implementing in your life. Like that's not necessary. But if it's going to impact the person, then yes, you need to clearly communicate it with them. But once it's communicated, you really have to remain committed to holding the boundary no matter what. So letting things slide a little every once in a while, whatever that looks like, it can become a slippery slope that leads right back to the old behaviors and patterns. It is incredibly important that you maintain the boundaries and hold them no matter what, even when it feels difficult, even when it might be easier to just let things slide a little. And this is one of the places where I support and help my clients so much in the various touch points that we have inside of my coaching program, because it can be really challenging to stay on track when it feels easier in the moment to just let things slide, when it feels easier in the moment to kind of fall back into old patterns, because it will feel easier a lot of times to just do what we're used to doing. This is why I highly, highly believe in getting support in creating any kind of change that you're trying to create in your life. Having someone in your corner to keep you on track, help you maintain that forward progress every step of the way is truly the biggest game changer. Because even if you are highly self-motivated, that tricky brain of yours is very skilled at getting you to fall back into those old patterns, even when you least expect it. As I said, boundaries can be a really tricky subject. And I think a lot of people have maybe misperception about what boundaries are and how they should be used in your life. But ultimately, when you are trying to get to a certain place in your life, when you've got a vision for where you want to go, when you really want to change your reality, you want to be living life in a different way, you will need to create boundaries around your own behavior. Because if you just keep moving through life in the same patterns, in the same cycles that you've been moving through life so far, interacting with others around you in the same way, nothing is going to change. Truly, it's not. You can have all of these ideas in your brain about the way you want things to be and how ideally your life would look. But if you don't start behaving differently, making different decisions, moving through life differently, so creating these new boundaries in your life around how you are going to move through life, the behaviors that you're going to do, and the way that you are going to interact with various people in your life, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to see the change. You need to have these things in place in order to actually change your life, which ultimately is what we're trying to do here, right? We want to live a life that feels meaningful, good, joyful, purposeful for ourselves. We want to feel lit the fuck up every single day in our lives. And that means focusing on what feels good for us, focusing on what is a priority for us, what we value in life. And so that means creating some rules, basically, and starting to move through life based on those new rules and how we see ourselves behaving in this vision, in this new reality that we want to create. So it is incredibly important to create some boundaries, maintain those boundaries, and start moving through your life in this new way. Okay. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this because my experience is that myself and most of my clients have had a tough time with boundaries and continue to have a tough time with boundaries. Because when you're someone who has lived your life caring very deeply about what other people think of you, there are many times where that desire to be liked or desire to kind of keep the peace has overridden any of your own needs or priorities. And it can be really, really hard to break out of that, to stop caring about whether someone's upset with you about creating this boundary, about moving through life in this different way now. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you had success in creating and upholding boundaries in your own life, or is this something that you've struggled with? And also, I think, as with most things in life, this can feel like it's always a work in progress. So I think it's about coming back to your priorities and continuously making decisions based on that. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I truly appreciate it. And I love getting to spend this time with you every week. So until next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day. That's it for another episode of the Authentic Awakening podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you found it helpful, I'd love to hear from you. You can do that by liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel or rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you're listening.